All right, welcome back. This is Compass Podcast. Today, I just decided to sit down here and record an episode really quick, mainly because the other day I was thinking of past things that I was into, or struggles that I've had, and I was thinking about how I tried to be creative inside of the family system that I grew up in, which, in the episode that I did with my older brother, where we talked about family system theories, and the type of family system that we grew up in, and how it was more of an isolated family system, cut off. We kind of, were isolated from a lot of what people might consider to be normal family functions, or normal ways for a family to operate inside of society necessarily. So we were really isolated in both education, religion. I would say education would be the big one because, we were homeschooled and so on and so forth. We did interact. A lot of kids who go to public schools, they have a lot of stuff at their disposal. Like, I was lucky enough that I was able to actually attend public school. And yes, I know a lot of people might think that that is a weird thing to say, but after being raised in the isolated way that we were, that my parents chose to educate us in what they deemed was an acceptable form of homeschooling, it ended up just isolating us and giving a very, narrow-minded, I guess a good way to put it would be we were viewing the world through what I can only refer to as tunnel vision. We were only looking at it from one person's perspective, or rather two people's perspectives, that being the perspectives of my parents. I seem to be kind of stumbling over my words because I have a lot I want to say, and I'm kind of talking over myself. That is a very bad habit. Anyway, what I was really thinking about was how inside of that isolated family structure, I tried, and a lot of my siblings as well, we tried to be as creative as possible. Out of all the mistakes that I would say my parents made, they did nurture us in a way to be, or rather want to be creative. That would be the best way to put it. I wouldn't say they nurtured us to be creative. I would say we tried to be as creative as possible inside of the paradigm that we were raised in. And what I was really thinking about was how were how was I creative inside, despite being isolated? This is something that is really fascinating to me, because a lot of people think that in order to be creative, you, have to, think outside the box. You have to have tools at your disposal. But I would say that it isn't necessarily always that way. Sometimes when you have a lack of things at your disposal, you have to be more creative than, someone who might have those toys at their disposal, or those things, those other people that they can interact with on a regular basis. Now, as for myself and my siblings and everyone else who was involved in our family system, we didn't really go out and get involved as readily as, a kid who is attending public school, or a kid who has more of an open family system, whose parents might be more open to outside input into their family system. Now, our parents were not, as I've discussed, especially in that one episode in regards to our family system. Now, is that to say that we were without lack of interacting with people outside of our family system? Hey, buddy. Sorry, I got my dog back here behind me, and I'm trying to fix up his paw, and he keeps wanting to, doctor it up himself, and we got some stuff on there for him. Just waiting for it to heal up. So I got him in here so I can watch him behind me. And so if you hear anything, that's just Rowdy making some noise back there. Anyway, yeah, I know you're a good boy, huh? You're a good boy. All right. Anyway, I was talking about, so we did interact with people. We regularly interacted with the neighbors across the street. We would play games with them. We also were briefly, for I think a couple years, on and off, as much as our parents were at least willing to let us interact with it. We were involved in a speech and debate club. Hey, bud. No, let's do none of that. And this club we would go to, I think it was like once a week. It was like Wednesdays or Thursdays or something like that. And we would go and we would interact with these people. We would do our speeches and our debates and all that kind of stuff. But the problem is we weren't actually able to interact with the people to really hear their perspective on things or their point of view. If they disagreed with us, we weren't the ones who were in the wrong. They were the ones who were in the wrong. And we were always told that we were better. We were going to beat everyone because we were the professionals, essentially. And we were the kids who were good at everything, and they were not. Especially because they may not have agreed with us on everything. And so therefore, we, even though we were able to interact, we weren't able to escape the box that we had been placed in growing up. Now, we had to find ways to explore our desire to be creative inside of this paradigm. And a lot of that was expressed through creative writing. We tried to create stories. I started way too many stories when I was growing up. Now, I don't really remember if I really finished any, but that was one way that I was able to express my creativity was through writing, which I still do to a certain extent. Now, another thing that we, my siblings and I really had a passion for, and I think it was really us just trying to, explore that creative side with the tools that we had at our disposal, was film. Now, obviously, if you've ever seen anyone try and make a family film, that's usually, involves someone with a handheld camera, blah, 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 blah. Now, we didn't really have a digital camera. I think we had one, but we weren't really allowed to use it. I think it was the nice family camera at the time. So, we had this other camera with a whole, videotape insert in there and everything, and I still have it in a bin somewhere. If I had it on me, I would pull it out so that way you could see it here. It has all those old family videos that we would make. Now, most of them were, we tried to create some sort of story. I know we did something like Robin Hood. We did stuff where we pretended to be in like an old American war or something like that, and we made our own costumes and all this stuff. Now, one of the weirdest, looking back, is very bizarre, and anyone who were to go watch it now, guaranteed, would also see it as something that was odd, at the very least. Now, as I said before, inside of the paradigm that we were placed in, we did our best to be creative. Sorry, I do keep looking over my shoulder because I just got to make sure that he's not, got to make sure that he's taking care of his paw back there. So, anyway, so this thing that people might have looked at as something bizarre or weird was every year, right around Easter time, we would reenact the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Yes, I'm sure if you're listening to this or if you're watching this, you're sitting there like, now why in God's name would a family reenact? Not only, it's not even reading the story. Why would a family reenact the crucifixion, like someone being nailed down to a cross, being crucified on a hill, and then reenact the part where he, rises from the dead and then ascends into the air, blah, 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 happy day. Now, this is not a thing an average American white Christian family does. It is horrifically bizarre. Most people who say that they are Christians, I'm sure, hey, none of that, please. No. might go to a church or a service around Easter time, right? And have the pastor tell the story of Jesus' death and resurrection, or at, the very least, the resurrection part, right? Or, if someone's into movies, you might watch, now, obviously not as a family, but if an individual who is of age and can watch an R-rated film might, watch The Passion of the Christ, for example, or the other slew of Jesus films that you have. And that wasn't us. We would go to church, yes, but we also, I don't remember if I mentioned it in past episodes, but our family was bounced around to a few different churches because of my parents disagreeing with the way that people would handle the church, or because the people in charge of the church, whether that be the pastor or other elders within the church, did not either, I wouldn't say they didn't like my parents, but my parents didn't agree with how they were teaching. They would, expect them to change it because that's not what they believed the Bible was saying, but that's how, they might believe it was saying. And so you would have these people, my parental figures who have this bullheadedness to them about what this means in the Bible, and then this being taught this way, and they think it's not the right way. And so there's always this clash. I actually remember in the middle of a church service, not to get off track here, but I do remember in the middle of a church service, my mother actually sitting there with the Bible on her lap and speaking up loud in the middle of the sermon and saying, that's not what the Bible says, because the pastor was like paraphrasing or something like that. And God forbid you paraphrase something, especially if in the King James, which already is hard to understand if you're just reading it. And, changing God's word, can't have that. So anyway, back to the bizarre story here. We would reenact. And not only would we reenact it, we legitimately would make a film. And we decided to make our own Jesus movie, right? Because a lot of the movies you would watch are, Jesus movies about Jesus' life, crucifixion, death, resurrection, checks all the boxes. And so we decided we were going to make our own crucifixion and resurrection movie. Now, looking back, I still have the DVD somewhere, and I watched it, and I was showing it, and my wife and her sister and my brother-in-law, they were like, have you ever thought about how bizarre this is? Like, we're watching a movie kids don't make movies where they reenact the crucifixion. Like, we weren't just making a movie. Like, it was like we had fake blood, fake nailing someone to a cross and everything. This is like, I'm sure there could be some sort of therapist or someone that could actually break this down for me and what this might mean for us. It could have some psychological meanings behind why we would do that, whether from our perspective or our parents' perspective or otherwise. But when I was talking with my older brother, we kind of talked it out, and my older brother was saying that he really thinks that it was just us trying to be creative with what we had at our disposal. Now, all, psychoanalysis aside, I would say that is very true. It didn't really mean anything to us. It's not like we were, it was performing some sort of ritual, right? It's not like we were doing some sort of thing that would bring us some sort of happiness by watching someone be fake crucified on a cross. No, I wouldn't say that that's what it was at all. We liked to make movies. We liked to write stories. We liked to tell stories. Now, how do you express this inherent desire to be creative when you're inside of this isolated family system that doesn't let you go out and, like, yeah, we would make, chase them down and beat them up movies. We would have all these different types of things that we would make where we had, like, airsoft guns, and we would do this. Yes, we would do that. But we were also very limited in what we could watch. Therefore, that had a direct influence on what we were inspired by. And I would say with the amount of gospel movies that we were, required to watch, that had a big influence on what we wanted to make when it came to film. And we would reenact. It's still very bizarre. I'm not denying that we would reenact the crucifixion because our parents wanted us to, and the resurrection. And it really makes me cringe and really laugh now. I'm not talking about it because it's so absurd. Like, not even churches do that. That I've been to. Not to draw any assumptions here. But anyway, we liked film and we would reenact it every year. And so I think we wanted to turn it into more of a fun thing instead of something that felt like a chore. So we started asking if we could film it. We make it into a movie. Not only was it enjoyable for us to make it into a movie, but enabled us to skip school. Now, I bet you're wondering, like, why would you want to skip school when you're not even going to a school and you are just being schooled at home? You are homeschooled. You're not going to a school. Why would you feel the need to skip school? Well, us, much like any other kid who sits down and does arithmetic or science or anything like that, we didn't want to either, so we would find excuses or reasons, whether that was helping our dad build a fence or, making a movie on the crucifixion skit. Then that's what we would do. And when I watched that movie, it is really weird. It's a full 15 or 20 minute movie that we actually put together legitimately, and yeah, it is. We were just trying to be creative. So, getting back to how we were creative inside of this closed family system, that would be how we didn't have a lot of tools at our disposal. And with the lack of exterior influences I had a good voice crack there. With the lack of the exterior influences in regards to, our creativity, we were very limited with we didn't really get to choose our form of entertainment. We liked movies, yes, but I didn't even watch The Lion King growing up. That's how limited we were. I could have said I would want to, and they probably still wouldn't have let me watch it because they had some issue with, they had issues with everything, like the witch doctor and, Simba's dad appearing in the clouds. For some reason, it was like, and they were even weird about Star Wars, even though, surprisingly enough, we were allowed to watch Star Wars, but that wasn't of our choosing, and they would skip parts like parts of 3, they would skip parts of The Phantom Menace where Qui-Gon was telling Anakin about the midichlorian count because, it's not true, because God forbid we try and use our midichlorians to, use the Force. There is a thing as science fiction, Mom and Dad. Anyway, that's how, as bizarre as it was, we were just trying to be creative inside of our family system. And I would say that was the primary way that we would try and express our creativity through storytelling. And we would express that through writing, narration. We would come up and tell each other stories. We would even do our own skits on the side during our play hours, right? We would go in the backyard. We would have pretend our place that was a ship, and we wrecked on a stranded island. We would even do our own version of LARPing, essentially, where we would dress up with swords and make our own costumes, and someone would have wizard powers and someone was just a knight, or you would have bandits and there would be thievery and stuff going on. We would concoct all these things. And so with, we would watch movies like Princess Bride, which apparently my parents deemed harmless, and Lord of the Rings, which apparently was deemed harmless, but we weren't allowed to watch stuff like Harry Harry Potter, we were limited on parts of Star Wars and all that other jazz. And so we were very limited in our form of entertainment. We were allowed to read a lot. Not Harry Potter, of course, but anyway, that would be really what it was. And looking back, I'm surprised to the extent that we were able to be creative with how closed off we were and isolated we were to a lot of other areas that we could have used as that could have helped us to light more of a fire to our creative side, especially nurturing that creative side. If, as a parent, if I see that my kid is that creative to the point that they want to go make a movie or they want to do that, I would want to nurture the flames of that creative desire as much as possible. And the fact that I feel like, I really feel like my parents didn't do that. They, to any extent, they allowed us to be creative, yes, but only as far as they were willing to, they only influenced us as far as they wanted to go. And in that area, I feel like they not only stunted our mental growth, but they also stunted our ability to be creative, our ability to pursue our own interests. I remember talking about wanting to do football, and I was lucky enough to able to do football once I got into public high school. But I feel like if I would have stayed, homeschooled, I wouldn't have been able to do certain things that I wanted to do. I mean, heck, even when we were doing the speech and debate club, there would be competitions that we wouldn't even go to because it could have been a question of money because there was a lot of us, but I feel like it was more of that. They always had these insane fears or phobias about interacting with people, and I think a lot of that was because they were trying to shelter us from what they deemed, external influences that they thought might be harmful or lead us astray that would teach us something different than what they wanted us to think. And in that aspect, they really stunted our ability to express ourselves in so many ways. And I feel like that took away from our childhood and, took away from our adulthood as well. Cause we have this, idea in our head that we know everything, but we're actually not prepared to the extent that we thought we were, and we also didn't get to explore certain things that we should have been able to sooner until we reached a certain age or, left and got taken from the home and all this kind of stuff. And it wasn't until that point that certain things that we did have an interest in became available to us. So anyway, that's really all I have on this episode. Being creative inside of an isolated family system. Now, looking back on your own childhood, in what way would you say that you struggled with being creative, or did you even struggle with being creative as a whole? Did your parents nurture that desire to be creative, or even nurture that desire to learn, something about a certain, thing that you're interested in, whether that's film, academics. There's so many different things that kids show an interest in, and maybe they pursue that, into the future, or maybe they pursue it for all of a few days to a week and then they drop it. But at least you provided your child with that opportunity, and it was there for them to use if they wanted to. If I have the ability to provide my child with something that they show an interest in, I want to be able to do that. I don't want to be able to, I don't want to hold them back for no reason, just because it's something that I either don't show an interest in or don't like. Anyway, thank you for listening to Compass Podcast, and I'll see you next time. Alright, and if you haven't seen it yet, I have part 1 to a film project that I am currently working on called My Mental Life. This film I gear toward focusing on personal experiences in regards to mental health, and I hope to release this in a multiple part series focusing on people's personal stories, including myself. And that's what I have up on my YouTube right now, is just the introduction, and I have plenty more to come, so please consider subscribing to see more on this project.